We are going to start this video with a quotation taken out of context. If you wanted to hear it in context, you could. You could read the whole email it's quoted from. In fact, if you were really that interested, you've probably already seen it in context. Quote, "I have only made one statement publicly since my video. That statement said that I had not accused him of rape because he hadn't raped me, which is not the same as saying that I had sex with him. Period." Close quote. That is a quotation from Hannah Chloe. That is a quotation in the context of a conversation in which she confirms that she had a telephone call with me, a Skype call via Skype, in which she said to me that she did indeed have sex with Durianrider, and she did not suggest that there was anything like rape, that there was anything like sexual assault. I do not have an audio recording of that Skype conversation. I have a clear recollection of it. If this actually went to court, I assume they'd be able to subpoena a recording from Skype. This is never going to go to court. And even that quotation I just read you can see it in context. You can see it out of context. If anyone just presented the email, the correspondence I've had with Hannah, and her evidently crazy and dishonest boyfriend, Noir Vegan, there would be plenty of reason to dismiss this in court. Now, I usually do not make videos addressed to the stupidest 40% of my audience. That's a principle I try to adhere to around here. But once in a while, there's something important enough to compel me to make an exception to the rule. What is the line of reasoning whereby Noir Vegan has overcome your skepticism? What's the line of reasoning whereby Noir Vegan has invited you to overlook many inconvenient facts and sources like this? Because there are many. Another one is Freely, source that's hard to rely on. We have a problem here where none of the people offering testimony are reliable, but I've got to tell you something. I can trust my own testimony. I'm myself, in a way, a witness to these events as they unfolded. Noir Vegan has invited you to turn off your powers of reasoning by arguing, first, that Durianrider accused others of rape. Second, that Durianrider has an exotic psychological condition called narcissistic personality disorder, NPD, narcissism, which he has not been diagnosed with, and he does not even fit the basic checklist of signs and symptoms for. And therefore, this is the third part of the syllogism, you are supposed to imagine that what Durianrider accuses others of, he is in fact, ipso facto, guilty of himself. So if I were to say to you that because Donald Trump accuses Bill Clinton of rape, that therefore Donald Trump is guilty of rape, does that make sense to you? Vice versa. There are allegations of at least sexual impropriety against Donald Trump from Hillary Clinton. Did you reason that Hillary Clinton was a narcissist engaging in psychological projection, and that therefore this was proof or evidence of Hillary Clinton committing the same crimes? This is a laughably weak argument. Laughably. Okay? Noir Vegan is a liar. Noir Vegan is lying to you. And I can't remember anyone in the history of YouTube who has been more flagrantly open about his own malice and his own motivations in lying to you. He has spelled out for you his means, motives, and opportunity. Okay? The only other element of Norvegan's argument is that he tries to present an argument by analogy, that what Hannah experienced was similar to what another young woman named Josie experienced. Okay? I disapprove of the relationship Durianrider had with Josie. I think Durianrider was very immature and cruel, especially in the period of their breakup. He did many things we would all consider unconscionable, dishonest, disreputable. However, absolutely nothing in Josie's account of the story, just taking her side of it, the story, no other witnesses, no excuses or explanations of Durianrider, Josie's account of the story never alleges rape. It describes him as someone who's sort of pushy and needy and immature. But again, Norvegan is hoping he can just blacken Durianrider's character to the point that any allegation and any accusation starts to seem credible and believable. And this is familiar to me, because it's the same thing Durianrider did himself when he tried to defame and denounce me in the public eye. He just blackened my character to the point when people were willing to ignore facts. And one type of fact in the digital era is what people say for themselves in the first person, in public statements, on a blog, or in a YouTube comment section, right? This is one type of evidence. So Durianrider alleged that I was sleeping with 2 women. This is the original allegation. And one of those women was living in Scotland, and it was completely impossible that I'd ever met her. She later did a podcast on this channel. You can hear us laughing about that the nature of these allegations, how or why did anyone believe them? They were so ridiculous. Okay, so that allegation disappeared because I guess at some point he figured out he couldn't back that up because I had never flown to Scotland, or I was in Scotland many, many years ago, not recently. And then the second allegation concerned a 16-year-old in Chiang Mai and who was spending a lot of time with Durianrider, but who had never met me. I'd never spoken to her face to face. And, of course, one salient form of evidence here is that she said it had never happened. She said she'd never met me. She said she'd never had any kind of improper contact or conversation with me. Okay? So, that's very different. There's no he said, she said. It's a completely one-sided story. I'm saying this is fake and it's a lie. The young woman is also saying openly at that time that it's fake and it's a lie. The other details are not worth rehearsing here. Okay? But with similarly spurious and specious reasoning, Durianrider led a crowd of maybe 100,000 people down a path to carry out a kind of witch hunt against me. Right? He had a big audience back then. That was him at the pinnacle of his fame and influence, and he was backed up by Freely and in the middle of this big promotional event. And I won. I didn't win by lying. I didn't win by joking around or misleading anyone. I won by just telling the truth. I won by just keeping it real. Okay? Unfortunately, I won at a terrible price. When I look at the judgment of the court against me in France, my ex-wife raised the fact that I was a YouTube celebrity many times, and in various ways that I was on YouTube, seemed to mention as often as possible. And I suppose that the judge looked into, it's the judge's job, what my YouTube career consisted of. And at that time, there were terrible allegations swirling all around YouTube against me. And there's a lot of vague wording in this court judgment against me. It has to do with the custody of my daughter, my right to see my daughter. Just saying that I'm a very psychologically disturbing character, things like this. which in my opinion there is no basis for in any of the legal documents. I don't think there's any sound basis or any other basis. I speculate that the judge came to that judgment, came to that decision on the basis of what the anonymous crowd said on YouTube. I'm sure the judge would be embarrassed to admit that. Okay? So it's had terrible effects on my life, and it's probably going to continue to have terrible effects on my life in the next couple of years. And guess what? What Noir Vegan is doing now, it's not helping me, and it's not helping him either. Okay? Durianrider is a liar. Durianrider is someone who discredited himself to an unbelievable extent, not just in attacking me, also in attacking many others. But I was the first one to really stand up against him decisively and in a clear and honest way demolish his reputation to the point where nobody took what he said seriously anymore. And the tragedy is that nobody can take what he says seriously in his own defense either, now that there are equally absurd, unjust, and legally invalid allegations being made against him. So that is the sad end of Durianrider's story. I had other options. I didn't have to play it this way. One option was to make a big joke out of this whole thing. Right at the beginning, to just laugh about it and say, how ridiculous. How ridiculous for you to say I slept with this 16-year-old who was very fat and very ugly and very stupid. I mean, she was 16, but it was laughable, the allegation, on many, many levels. She was a young woman who was struggling with being horrendously obese, horrendously overweight. She'd gone to Thailand to try to lose weight. It was a desperate struggle. A very sad story. But there were many things about that story that were not credible. And he made these grandiose claims that I'd slept with a huge number of women in Quebec when I was living on the west coast of Canada, and that I'd had some flirtations with or slept with a bunch of women within Chiang Mai, Thailand, within just like 48 hours of my getting off the plane. I think he didn't realize how I'd kind of just arrived there. It would have been very easy for me to have a satirical, joking response to it. And, I could have gotten up the map and said, oh, yeah, of course, this completely makes sense. Within these 48 hours, I flew to Quebec and had a love affair there and then flew across the world. You could have had a laugh at it a whole bunch of different ways and not treated it so seriously. Second option. I could have remained completely silent, and I could have solved it through violence. It crossed my mind, especially when Durianrider was in Vientiane, the capital city of Laos, the People's Democratic Republic. If there's one place on earth I know my way around, I know my way in, and I know my way out, and I know my way how to handle the cops and the authorities, and I speak the language, it would be Vientiane, the capital city of Laos. And yeah, that option crossed my mind, especially when I found out that Durianrider was, at that time, kind of, for quite a while, based out of the capital city of Laos. And it was a very simple ethical question I had to ask myself. I think the only thing that justifies violence is preventing violence. I think the only circumstance that would really justify murder is if you're going to prevent someone from committing a murder, from committing many murders, where the harm that you're averting is greater than the harm that you're doing. So that was a very easy question for me to answer. And I also could see that by instead standing up publicly and discussing and debating these things openly, I could avert harm. I could prevent other people having their lives destroyed, other people being defamed, other people having their names dragged through the mud, etc., with no violence at all, with no negative side effects at all. Except possibly, as mentioned, the very real negative side effect for me in the custody decision, divorce decisions related to my my time with my daughter. The question you have to ask now about what Norvegan is doing: is he trying to avert harm, or is he trying to harm people? I've known this guy and talked to him for years, and one by one I've seen the other people who supported him and sympathized with him. They've had to come to the conclusion, however reluctantly, that he's really crazy, he's really dangerous, he's really destructive, he has bad intentions. Nothing is going to satisfy Noir Vegan. When he's done with Durianrider, he'll target someone else. When he's done with Foot Soldier, he'll target someone else. When he's done with me, he'll target someone else. This is not somebody who is doing harm in order to avert harm. Noir Vegan has become the very thing he pretends to hate.